Hello, this is a video on the nature of influencers. It wouldn't go through when I put a link to the Judge Napolitano has a YouTube short with a guest, Max Blumenthal, and they mentioned in it they mentioned influencers. See, there are journalists and there are influencers associated with Washington D.C. The intelligence community has the roles with two speech class teachers I have, not trying to. And I want to make a note too, because I was just watching a video on the with the FBI, and FBI Director Wray was noting that people often want investigations to unfold the way they want them to. In other words, each individual voice, since before our founders were born, there was a breaching method that measured and maintained algorithmically collusions with itself, people hurting each other for its method, and helping each other as collusions with its method, criminal insidiousness, natures of positive and negative treatments. I'm not a lawyer. We have black pupils, whites of eyes, and the identity of nature to be able to discern how, for example, things like witch trials, things like slavery, we could discern how lawyers, all sides of cases, and the courts themselves could be, were, and are capable of being discerned collusions, including the prisons tied to them, already having been, and per the nature of things, per the course for which Bach sings. It is the sound of all the music through all, it is the sound of the value of all rest, of the rest through all of music, which is only increasingly valued even once music is no longer. Once our special difference has been wasted from here, where Earth has relativity to the concentrated identity of relationship to it has to itself, the identity of space/existence, to the extent we can discern that complete identity, it comes with its complete identity, its complete identity of relationship to itself that will only stay perfectly increasing in value simultaneously with that being increasing in value and the value of that. And this is how it shows us too. It's the same identity that has those three parts of time. The extent we know is true always from the past. We know the extent we know is true right now always. Like with this live, I know I'm live streaming on YouTube. To an extent, I could be only some FBI guy watching because they're hiding what I found them using Judge Napolitano's Facebook page for, even from him. That's why how they're leaking too, because that's part of the only way they could get away with it. And they demonstrated names next to the colleges and universities involved with names on and off them that have stayed criminally foreign influence relative to where and how. This breaching method assigned names A through Z. Differences A through Z. Force, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, use as systems individually grouped and together. Tactical ulterior from how nature has us. Differences in names A through Z. And it measured and maintained roles with that. And roles with that is going to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. With all positive treatments like truths, used for lies, used to screen lies, used to measure and maintain the value of the scientific value of a breaching method, left out by identities of logic, identities of law. There is a certain type of victim/hyper victim that is formal, private law, and just everyone else's opinion about the law, A through Z, as an array that can't defend its fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects in nature and afford to exist, let alone to protract. Short words with convictions proper regarding regarding reality and regarding James Madison's plan and regarding evidence and regarding the value of something just because it's published. So in other words, this breaching method assigned a whole bunch of jobs as identities of logic that would speak for law as criminal insidiousness nature. therefore increasingly incapable of countering it properly. So self-valuing their being and having been means remotely showing them how to pretend other anyway. For the breaching method that propagated a whole bunch of roles with a whole bunch of hyper additional motivations, needs, and natures to hide the same sequence shifts, the same exact finite, active, progressive grouped lies, lie progressions, identity, theft, fraud, slanders, roles. Where and how George Washington's identity is stolen with this, too. For example, we're supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. See, we have these things replaced. The nature of the debate, how they get away with it, they have value of titles, jobs, economic values. We look at New York City, we look where there's poverty, that doesn't justify it. In other words, we could better than free lift people out of that. Because when I say that, in other words, who wants to debate it is going to have inherent active progressive to their logic and natures. Demonstrations are the same thing. But this is relative to why and how influencers like Facebook is still confessing to me they're involved with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents, replacing their people have been replacing words and putting stuck in the word extremism. I put it on there too after that, and to give them more to lie about. They have rules with rape threats with New Britain Superior Court. That was before the principal child abuser was caught as one of the people that were involved with prosecutors and judges before the World Trade Center attack at West Hartford locations, influenced by foreign and domestic military and people that their families and intimate ties of Hartford courts, New Britain courts, Connecticut's district court. They have been using locations next to colleges to hide lie progressions, not for when there were real reasons. It's not those real reasons alone. This breaching method has people. So in other words, WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves. Has something to do with a whole bunch of people tied to Gayle King, and you can't lie about that. That's what they said. These are also people involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, forcing roles. Also as people with the Department of Children and Families, who had roles with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and judges and prosecutors and their family, people that work with courts in the foreign countries at West Hartford locations, people on all sides of depositions, all sides of criminal and civil cases, including in the Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan the day of the World Trade Center attack. There had been collusions fitted for themselves. See, the difference of lies or not, we would have discerned had one integrity of law. We don't know what. Forgiveness is to let someone explain that which is discernible, which not one identity of the law formal can defend themselves because they have rules of predicate acts with facts methods. There are predicate acts with facts methods sickly distinctly on Hartford and sickly distinctly on Wethersfield with the same names involved. And even consciously pretending that they don't realize when they're saying, oh, well, there's not as many murders in Wethersfield, because they have roles with the reported murders and confessions regarding one that appears to be an accident or is reported to be an accident. In other words, Fox Connecticut News keeps having this in with their stories, distinctly from the other news agencies, and public television has Russians and Americans involved with the former director of the FBI's lawyer, Robert Luskin, his lawyers, Robert Chevrolet, and people next to his law offices, intercities, and like East Hartford has a whole bunch of people involved with that know my name. I don't even know their names. They have conjunctions to Covington Street. Covington Street has been using predicate acts with facts methods with investigators, totally fabricating through decades with people on my street named O'Brien that used to live on my street, O'Brien. They were involved with various different police departments with wire crimes, and with people named Cololo. That's they didn't give the whole name, but there are more names involved. There's a Phil Cololo involved with a Bob Chase at Whiting Forensics, who's also recorded involved with a Joshua Julian, with the Facebook page of the principal child offender, with KKK themed, black themed, and Confederate flag themed, Latino themed collusion with a whole bunch of different countries too. And they forced Saudis to roll with them. And with the World Trade Center attack, where the Saudi attackers also forced us to roll with that coalition setup. And their roles with extreme uses of extremism, recorded tactically, criminally foreign influence, and tactically delusions wrong. So they have influencers, and they have things that they try to do to limit damage control for misinformation, things like that. We have the news, and the experts on that have been using such just to use locations to hide live progressions, to hide their actually standing identities, and to hide what's to come. Because they are shown that simultaneously per where and how they were used remotely leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. Also with the names, including the names of the locations, including the value of that, next to Fox Connecticut News, next to WFSB, and next to WTNH. So as a certain type of victim, the WTNH was influenced by the FBI and the other agencies involved in foreign and domestic military to plant evidences along Route 175 and its conjunctions, and through places in Wethersfield. And next, in other words, preemptively acting on and off campuses too, with the principal child abuser. I caught more recorded with that. Ron Adams also confessed the name Powell, but I believe he switched names. He's been switching sequences and obstructing justice. And Ron Adams, he also brought up the name Judge Napolitano in his confessions. How you doing? Very few. In other words, influencers. I was mentioning a video I put in the description. Influencers go to Washington D.C. apparently, and these are like a whole bunch of little girls and like 14-year-old girls and stuff like that. In other words, they're teaching the next age how to make money. They haven't addressed how originally instilled the breaching method employed economies, more so than America's founders, who also have their identity stolen in our face. We were supposed to explain about how the breaching method allowed no one free speech, and everyone had to pretend other relative to their laws and their method of sensing through ourselves, because it had already sustained everyone hurts each other right when and how it tells them to. They're wrong. They use the countries A through Z remotely since before modern religious messengers were born. Because this force tricked, hurt, and persuaded the names A through Z of the human species body to defend themselves, not realizing that they were how to do it properly, who to blame properly. So not realizing simultaneously they were using the names of the sciences more and more abridged and defending that, self-valuing that, and how that could be and was and is used remotely. Even if, in other words, that's why the suburbs in America were designed before America's founders were even born, for torture, extortion, and slavery, sickly distinctly north and south, sickly distinctly based on what nationality you are, and the relativity to its needs, because it had a breaching method that needed. That's how it sustained control. It made people speak about the law anyway. It made people make short words and convictions for the sciences. Everyone has to rely on, oh, this person's a law expert. The lawyers, what are witch trials about? Even if witch trials were made up, they're about that fact-cheating nature, torture, extortion, slavery method against our founders, sickly distinctly, and how it was entrenched, sickly, not distinctly against everyone. And it was and is functional how everyone leaves that scientific value out, how it is not is against us all non-distinctly. We have with black pupils, white survives. It is more probable and demonstrable that this comes with cipher, just like president slash chief does. And see, we have our founders, words change. We're supposed to describe our founders as the face of James Madison and his plan. And George Washington agreed to use that plan. And there were more than 13 colonies. They had to counter extort. And then this breaching method, in other words, enforced people to break the rules of the breaching method. In other words, which were crazy fact, cheap nature, torture, extortion, slavery method against everyone. So everyone's really scared to do that, but they'd be counter extorted, forced to do it. That's before it's the Declaration of Independence and of the Constitution. That's before it's the Constitution, the Constitutional Convention. See, people want the nature debate contains quality aspects in nature that's criminally foreign influence, that are criminally foreign influence, simultaneously tactically delusions raw. That's why, in other words, people wouldn't be playing music about the Constitution, leaving out the breaching method that was entrenched. The only reason they had the courage to do that, the leverage to do that, was based on James Madison's plan, which counter-extorted at those locations, at 13 locations or whatever, and key locations, and made them have no choice to be able to defend themselves from. Because, for example, if anyone was found out that they were just even discussing building infrastructure, what they could build different or better outside of internationally monitored context, they hurt that person, everyone around them, and worse, killed. In other words, that's why it was really sick laws against every single person. It's not just because there was sick laws, no one had free speech. Everyone had to pretend to other. There was a method by this, but no one pays attention to that method because this breaching method was sophistication before anyone was sophistication in modern countries A through Z. For example, the beginning of the Old Testament comes to the part that dictates how to read that book and how to defend it. It says only defend this part right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together, and the part before it. And this is right at the beginning, where it's right before the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And at the beginning of the Quran, too, has a part that says this is the only part that matters. All you have to do is defend this part right here. And be honest about if you're going to use the name Allah for the identity of the hyper-simultaneous or not, per transliteration. And it says to qualify the individuals superiority in defining and defending Islam the way they want, it obligates them not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason they don't accord with. So you guys have people killing and all these, but they're hurting Muslims because they wear the thing. Then they have the other side that, in other words, you guys leaving it, that's nonsense. The only part that you have to defend to be a good Muslim is honesty. Are you going to use the name Allah for the science about the hyper simultaneous or not? So you guys can't be honest at A through Z. The people who wrote the Quran and who wrote the Old Testament wrote it with consciousness that there would be remote uses by the breaching method of the differences between the people who run the religions and the people who run the counters to them and the exceptions. All collusions with its uses of quality aspects in nature, of fact-cheaping nature, that can't afford their styles of logic in nature and afford to be, let alone to protract, short words with convictions proper, like regarding one can't understand American history if they don't understand how James Madison's plan and his face was supposed to represent the face of our founders. And that's what George Washington agreed to help. And then they had to counter extort, and that's what forced the Constitutional Convention, and that's what forced the Declaration of Independence. So, in other words, nature itself comes with answers. The Constitution unabridged, the predicate act shows the identities of criminal insidiousness nature, or an identity of criminal insidiousness nature. But it comes with identities plural because predicate acts are leveraged interstates or internationally. This is about criminal foreign influences, but it's also, slash hypercriminal foreign influences. We have to define it this way because nature shows it this way. I'm not a lawyer. It wouldn't allow my video to go when I put the link to the YouTube short with the influencers from Washington, D.C. and interstates. Again, in the Ninth Circuit Court, licensed journalists have collusions with names on all sides of that court, all sides of the case in the World Trade Center attack. There was a Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers. Names on all sides of that case, of that court. And the court itself put sequence shifts into the databases. And with people that have been increasingly each year of my life planting evidences tied to the people I noted that used to live up my street involved with wire crimes of various police departments. As police forms, with the other ones brought up by the police, Cololo. Ray Cololo used the word immature and psychedelics on here because he's got a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital, foreign and domestic military, overt criminal enterprises, doctors, lawyers, their patients. They all run into high life progressions. Has something to do with people that used to work at the community center, and Detective Dillon, a whole bunch of people, Thomas Dillon and Anna Dillon, involved with medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic, including with retired police chiefs from Wethersfield, Connecticut, who are ones also involved in internetworks, planting evidences, fake motivations. See, they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents originally instilled that our founders left us to address. But see, these Judge Napolitano won't follow mandated law. How a good guy won't follow mandated law and gets away with it is because they've been also relative to them stacking predicate acts with facts and collusions. Also, the same people did this interstates, all sides in criminal and civil cases. So 2 speech class teachers I had in high school too, they have roles with all names all along Route 175 with federal evidences crimes and with child offender identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, recorded criminally foreign influence tactically delusions wrought with his co-defendants on Fox Connecticut News, involved with inter-social media platforms, further upskirt pictures on Twitter, and further roles with the passion crimes like rape threats by New Britain Superior Court because they have been hiding what I recorded requests to help. They're preventing me help since before the World Trade Center attack. A whole bunch of intelligence on off Central Connecticut State University has families that are also like medicine and military at UConn. Inter-campuses departments. This preaching method uses all groupings of the sciences of groupings, tactical data from how nature uses groupings, how we are species body of individual bodies with grouped difference singular /s. It's the identity of hypersimultaneous is generating all others. So to discern how it is a Trinity, this is one way it is in Trinity, but with it, in other words, the difference between how it is grouped 3 ways and 5 ways, the body of time. Again, it is a extent we know that was past from the past. We know was true always. There's an extent that is active now that we know is true always. Grouped, in other words, grouped relative to being the species body, but also relative this way because there are other species bodies. And nature itself wants us to see and understand, think about why and how. The other, even bugs have quality aspects, nature, consciousness, that we share can communicate with them. And the nature of it is relevant relative to. In other words, if a bug comes in your house, in other words, interact with it, try to interact with nice with it. In other words, if you try to go right at it, it will fly away and get scared. It's conscious that you're coming after it. In other words, if you try to help it get outside, it will. You could discern. In other words, just like pets, even insects have consciousness. In other words, even sharks, 2 eyes. So we have answers that are being and have been replaced. We have theories that are entertained, requiring criminally foreign influence, fact treatment nature styles, and evidences treatments to pretend that's practical. Immanuel Kant used phrases like practical reason and pure reason. And if we pay attention to the context, no one had free speech and everyone had to pretend other. See, this preaching method knew that once it had all locations, areas, and states everywhere the species body is, self-valuing, abridgments of the sciences, of the value of the Constitution unabridged, and with defenses of themselves. They would have instantly means to hide behind increasingly, knowing that nature increasingly is going to demonstrate to humanity. A human fact treatment nature breaching method is an answer that has been replaced. It's an answer that's being demonstrated to us, where nature demonstrates to us questions like what caused wars. A predicate acts with facts delivery system method caused it. That which had slavery sickly distinctly, and torture and extortion methods sickly distinctly against every body of the human body, northern colonies, southern colonies, and already the countries that were apart with that. That's why England doesn't even, for example, England doesn't even remember the history of English property. But it is clear. In other words, so I was in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center Tower as an observer. But those people both sides were used for that predicate acts against me. Recorded, their identities were stolen too. And inside the court, someone stole the identity of the court, post-dating inside the court legal papers. That was proven too. In the Ninth Circuit Court, the day of the World Trade Center attack, post-dated legal papers had been presented to the panel of judges. Again, and names on all sides of that case, and names next to the building and at the World Trade Center were all involved with the people each year stacking more predicate acts with facts. A whole bunch of people involved with wire crimes on my street with the same families. The WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others. They also pretended I went to the police station or made a police report with police when I was a kid. I did not. They wanted me to, and I did not. The ones who did go there, they had conversation with themselves. I only know Chris Walters planting evidences with overt criminal enterprises and private ones with my neighbors and people next to schools planting evidences on and off campuses with people that I've never even had classes with tied to my neighbor. And when I did have classes with them, I recorded they had criminally foreign influence uses of that too. All sides in criminal and civil cases. Also the name Scalora, they were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved. With more child offenders, leaders of kids. There's an Institute of Living on the campus of Hartford Hospital, founded in 1822, with slavery still entrenched in Connecticut. A whole bunch of doctors, lawyers, even judges that work there have a whole bunch of natures of organized crime, acts and roles, and methods in planting fake conversations, forging names of foreign and domestic doctors, also for their use of their identity. These are various natures of courts personally involved with them, criminally too, personally and professionally. in the news at the same time. Forgiveness is because they also had timed collusions with the Saudis. These are the cousins of my neighbor, and were involved with my wife before we got divorced. And in other words, we had a lot of fights about this because they kept bringing up, like, Ray Reynolds is also involved with this. Identity theft, fraud, slanders with people that were putting fake things in databases at campuses. Falsified police reports roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Intercities of Connecticut and interstates. They have roles with state police, military, foreign and domestic, other agencies. Spirit God. In other words, they have grouped criminal enterprises wrong relative to how nature uses our groupings. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. There are exceptions nature. Nature communicated to the ancients the way we could appreciate again, and it reveals evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. But to do this, we have to use this system. We have to have mandated law followed. Everyone, someone please go on Judge Napolitano's Facebook page, YouTube channel. Judging Freedom with Judge Napolitano. And ask him to get the Connecticut interbranch with the Wethersfield Police from the names forging and switching it onto paper. And when they say what their motives are, tell them that's not it. Others recorded. And if they lie about that, I'll show you that they're lying. And we're going to go deeper into it because there are people with the name Dylan that brought this up. And they forged fake conversations with the Slahy family. And I haven't got a response because they confessed about that too. With the two, there was retired police chiefs with the same houses involved. There's a David Smith, Jamie Smith, and his mother has people involved with credible threats of violence who run in as patients who have their doctors collusion, but even if they're undercover police, they're involved with the people with whiting forensics planting evidence on my street and at relative locations like the town, like the library. These are also people leading years through decades with Afghan leaders and kids, with German leaders and kids. We have criminally foreign influence people tied to this Justin Klavinskas. I've never had a class with him in my life. They're putting whole little illusions into the databases. The campuses confess this too. Then they try to say that's part of why that principal child abuser, they said he's in prison for obscure pictures. There are more obscure pictures. He was forced roles with even in prison with Twitter with FBI associated with that also, and the name Ian. Increasingly, people tied to Reno Mazzucato and their family members and neighbors are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, attaching me to fake locations, fake ties to themselves, fake natures of ties to themselves, trying to plant fake exceptions, all sides in criminal and civil cases. These are people that have more scams against the people of intercities of Connecticut than there are streets and houses in Hartford, Connecticut. And what are they doing next to Central Connecticut? That's the CSU Magnet School, with the confessions tied to the intelligence community made something to do with the Scaloras there, and along,